What's going on, everybody? My name is Jared and welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we are going to be continuing with part 3 of the reassembly of the transom assembly, including getting everything in that we can before we get it back on the boat. And by the end of this video, we're going to have the transom assembly reinstalled on the boat, which is going to feel amazing. Stick around. Back in 2017, I began a full restoration of my 96 Bayliner by tearing it apart all the way down to the hull. From there, I began the rebuilding process, which included learning to fiberglass, rebuilding an engine and outdrive, learning to fair and paint, and even upholstery. Now, I've bought a 28-foot cabin cruiser, and I'm starting all over. Welcome, my name's Jared. Now get ready, because it's going to be a ship show. Alright, well this probably feels like a familiar location. Got stuff sitting on the bench. We've been spending a lot of time here. We got seals out, we got bulkhead fittings out, we got homemade tools out, we got the gimbal housing ready for some of this stuff to go in. So yeah, let's dive in. Alright, so the first thing I want to get installed here is this grease seal, and this goes down in below where the gimbal bearing goes. So I'm going to go in with that first here. I have a very old video where I made this tool. It looks ridiculous. It's made out of cast iron pipe from the hardware store. I was just trying to be cheap. I mean, if you're doing this, just buy the tool or figure out something else close that's going to work. But this is what I'm using. So this just goes in here. This side of the seal goes towards the engine. This side is towards the drive. So we're gonna get this started down in here. Really the key here is just making sure you drive it in straight. Okay, it's going in pretty straight. And you could hear that at the end there. Just by sound you could tell it bottomed out. So that was some successful hammer time. Now let me bring in here so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so that is the seal right here. And that's installed and ready to go. So the next thing I want to do is this bulkhead fitting. Now I just opened this out of a brand new unopened package and I noticed it was missing an O-ring here. Coincidentally, I had the right size one, so let's go ahead and get this in. This is just FYI. This is the bulkhead fitting for your drive lube. So your drive lube, your end may look different than this. Yours might have a hose on here. Mine's a quick connect fitting, so that's why it looks this way. But this goes down in here, and I just replaced the old one because this is a very common problem, a known issue when you're changing your bellows and all the hose and stuff in here, that this plastic fitting snaps off. So I preemptively ordered it, and sure enough, when I removed the old one, it did snap off. Okay. So before this goes in, we need to lubricate the O-rings with just regular drive lube. So I have one here that's already open. Just gonna get a little bit on my fangy and just coat these O-rings. Now this should essentially just push right in, but we may need a little persuasive maintenance. Okay, so this goes in that hole right there. And the hose gets oriented downward. Now there is a specific orientation here, you'll notice, if you can see that. The casting has this like notch in it that aligns with the hex, that little hex shape. Okay, just keep walking it in. So we're up to the next O-ring. So I'm just about out of reach here. So I'm going to use this thing just because it's laying here and tap this in the rest of the way. That is fully seated. Okay, there you go. So the last thing we need to do for this bulkhead fitting is reinstall the E-clip. Now, this is from the old one, so make sure you hang on to it. So this just pops on here. Okay, now this is probably overkill, but I just rotated it. So if it tried to come off, it would hit this piece of metal here and can't really. So it's more of a make me feel better thing. So we got the bulkhead fitting in, we got the grease seal for the drive shaft. Now, I think what I would normally be doing next is, if you can see this up here, no, we can't see that. Up here is where the speedometer fitting would go. And in my bag labeled speedometer fitting is just that. I think that I am actually going to go and plug this hole. I've had nothing but, hold on, we need to have a serious talk. I've had nothing but problems in previous boats with regular speedometers with the rubber hose, the pitot tube. I'm assuming just constantly get clogged up with seaweed, and that's on boats that I've always trailered, so it's not like there's even marine growth in there. This is going to be even worse because this boat is going to be living in the water for a whole season. I think I'm going to be ditching this and going with a GPS speedometer. Now, I could easily go back and put this in, not easily, it's not going to be fun, but I could go back and put this back in later. I hate them. I hate them. So I'm going to plug that hole. It's just a regular 1/8" NPT thread, so just regular stainless steel plug will do just fine. Now, that being said, this is about as far as I can go with this right now. We are about to jump ahead probably about 5 days here. That is because my mercathode, the part that mounts to the bottom of this gimbal housing, that thing is shot. It was covered in dirt, so I just put it in the bag. I was like, I'll deal with that later. Finally got it out today to get it ready for this. And as I was doing that, I realized there was a little wire that was basically potted in epoxy inside. That was completely corroded away and not connected anymore. So I hopped on Mercruiser Parts and looked it up and ordered a new one. So that is on the way. It's probably going to take 3-4 days to get here. But I did also notice that it is a new part number that supersedes the one that was on here. So I'm guessing that was a known or common issue that they've hopefully rectified. So that's good news. The downside is that's $180 that I wasn't planning on spending. On top of that, I needed to touch up a little bit of paint in the bilge before I could put this in. And I just opened my can of total bilge and the entire bottom 3 inches that were left have solidified. So I have no bilge paint, which is another $100 I wasn't planning on spending. But I'm going to be stopping here for a few days at a minimum. So let's time travel to the future. And welcome to the future. All right, so let's jump back into this thing, and we are going to begin that by installing the hydraulic manifold that the trim hoses mount to on the bottom of the drive here. I just got this coated the last few days in anti-fouling paint, so now that that's ready to go and dried, let's get this installed. So the first thing we need to do is take our trim hoses. We're going to feed them up through the bottom of the drive here. So these are going to come up through here. Now I believe this is symmetrical, so there is no right up or down. And the ports just go straight through. So now the hoses do matter. So the gray hose is closer to the drive, the black hose is closer to the transom. Now that that's started, I'm gonna work this back through here because I don't know once they're fully tightened if I'm gonna be able to. So that's most of the way, and then we'll get those nuts tightened up. I'm gonna get those started with a 7/16 open wrench. Okay, now we're going to switch to a flare nut wrench just for the last couple of oomphs. That is German Torx pick, good and tight. Oh no, forgot the gasket. It's a good trial run. Okay, we're back. Took it apart, put the gasket in, and now we're back here. Didn't show you that because it was literally the same thing we just did. So anyway, let's get this aligned with these bolt holes. There we go. And we are going to tighten this to that many foot-pounds. Okay, now that we got the hydraulic manifold installed, the next thing we need to do is get the mercathode mounted to the bottom of that. Here is the new mercathode assembly. This is actually a different design than what I had before. On the original, you can see this big giant disc wasn't here. There actually used to be a metal plate on the front. I was kind of nervous when I first got it because I was like, that's not what mine looked like, but this is the new design. So on the new one, it comes with the connector not installed because that won't fit through the hole in the hydraulic manifold that we just put on. So we need to go ahead and fish these wires through this hole in the center of the hydraulic manifold. And then once it's through this side, we can take some needle nose pliers or something and kind of grab it and pull it out. So we're just going to feed these 2 wires up through here. Come on. There we go. Okay. So we're just going to feed the rest of this wire through. Once we get up to the last little bit, we're going to make sure we have our orientation correct. So this side says transom, so that faces the transom. That's the same side that has like the coil thing. And now we just need the bolts. For good measure, we're going to put a little form a gasket on there. And this goes down through here. Okay, so these get tightened to 25 inch-pounds. That feels like nothing. I'm going to give it a little extra. Okay. Okay, so with the mercathode fully installed, the trim wires fully installed, at least through the transom part, I am going to quickly get some zip ties and zip tie all this stuff together just to keep it nice and tidy. So with that done, there is one more thing that I would like to do before we can put this on the boat, and that is to get the trim senders installed. So these are the new trim senders for my setup. I have the digital trim, so this may look a little bit different than yours. This is the 3-wire. So these have these 2 little over molded halves of wire. So it makes like a little cone sort of thing. And this gets wedged inside the transom assembly. Let's get these wires run through. So you can see down in here these 2 over molded halves and the tapered hole that they go into. So I'm gonna try and do this. It's gonna be kind of tough to show you what's going on. I'll give you a better view once it's installed. So that looks pretty good for now. And we're gonna take our clamp, let's position this down over the wires. Might actually have to put that on first. So that is pretty well sitting over the clamp for now. So now I'm gonna try and get that bolt started. And that gets tightened to 97 inch-pounds. So it's kind of a scary thought, but it's ready to go on the boat. Let's do it. Okay, so there's one last thing I need to do before we go through this on the transom, and that is installing this gasket. Now it's literally just a foam like giant O-ring, so it's not molded to shape, usually twisted up weird, but what I found actually works the best for this is just regular old super glue. Just basically go around, put a couple of dots in any of the spots that it makes like big turns, especially down here at the bottom, these 90-degree turns, just to get it to hold its shape until you get it on. And one other thing to note is there is a joint in this, because the way they make these gaskets is basically just a continuous extrusion of like a foam gasket material. So they cut it to length, loop it around, and actually glue it. So there is a joint on here, and you want to make sure that that joint is at the top of the transom, so basically the part that's out of the water most of the time. So just be aware of that. We're just going to work our way around and get this thing glued in place and throw it in the boat. Okay, we are out at the boat. Got the transom assembly sitting down here on the ground. And as you can see, that super glue for the gasket worked out really well. Just a couple of dots around in all the places where it makes some turns, and it's holding in place just fine. And we are good to go. I came out earlier today and cleaned up as best as I could around the keyhole in the transom, and that's going to be good enough for now. The main thing is where the sealing areas for the gasket is clean, which it is. So we are basically ready to go. I'm going to set the camera down here. I also forgot to mention, I kind of zip tied all the wires and trim hoses and everything together for the time being. I'm gonna have to undo that before I put the inner transom plate on, because the trim wires go through different openings than everything else. So I'll show you that on the inside once we get there. But for now, we are ready to pop this thing in. Obviously gonna start by just kind of feeding this stuff through. Two bottom studs going. Let's get this continuity wire poking through. So that's going to go in the rest of the way. I'm just kind of peeking my eyes around real quick just to make sure the gasket didn't come loose anywhere. Looking good. Yep, gasket's in good shape. So that's going to send it home. That's as far as it's going to go until I go inside and start tightening on the nuts. So let me go get the washers and nuts, pick up from in there. Be right back. Oh man, we haven't been in here in a while, huh? But here it is from the inside. As you can see, I mentioned previously that I had not painted this before, so I had to go ahead and finish around the transom before I could do this. And this paint's cured probably like a week and a half at this point, so it's definitely fully cured. We got the trim wires coming through. I cut these loose from the trim hoses so I can feed them through. So let's go ahead and do that. So we got our nicely painted inner transom plate here. Let's go ahead and start with the trim hoses, because they're extra long and easy to get out of the way. It's straightforward. It just goes through that giant bottom opening. But the trim wires, let me feed them through here and then I'll show you which hole they actually go through. So if you can see that, there's these 3 holes here. This is for your speedometer, which, crap, I didn't plug that yet, but I'll be able to do that from inside. So we run our trim wires through the center opening. So let's go ahead and feed this stuff through. Get the steering arm and continuity wire through that top. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of just trying to fight this a little bit. So what actually kind of aligns all this stuff together is the circular part of the transom where the gimbal housing has to align with this opening here for the drive shaft. And that's actually kind of what keys everything in the right position. Just kind of wiggling stuff around, trying to get those to align properly. There we go. So we got that started. Now these are, I'm going back with stainless steel nuts and washers. These are 3/16 stainless. That being said, because I replaced the 4 bottom studs on the gimbal housing, with stainless. There's something you need to be extremely careful about when putting stainless fasteners together, stainless on stainless, and that is called galling, thread galling. So if you put stainless fasteners together dry, the stainless will actually essentially cold weld to itself, and once that happens, there's no getting them apart. You literally have to cut the parts, cut the nut off or whatever. So to avoid that, I'm just using thread sealant. I've never had an issue with it. It's always worked fine for me. So just the same Permatex Forma gasket stuff I use on basically every other thread. But the key takeaway is you have to use something. Ask me how I know. So I'm just gonna get a bunch of these started, and then we will get everything torqued down. So we are going to switch to the torque wrench, and surprisingly a low torque on this. It's only 25 foot-pounds for these. You would think something that's supporting the back of the motor and all that torque and everything would be more than that, but I triple checked the manual and it is 25 foot-pounds. All right, starting to get tight, so I think this is going to be it here. That's it. All 8 torque to 25 foot-pounds. One thing I am going to do is probably let this sit overnight, just as a sanity check. Let things kind of settle in, the gasket compress all the way, even though I think it already is. And I will come back tomorrow and just recheck the torque, make sure nothing's changed or loosened up, retorque to 25 foot-pounds, and at that point this thing is essentially done, which is awesome. And then I can start putting everything else on, the gimbal ring, or the gimbal, not the gimbal ring's already on, the bell housing, stuff like that, the bellows, shift cable, everything, all that stuff. So that being said, I think we're going to end this one here. This is long enough and a big milestone. There's been a hole in the back of this boat for longer than I care to admit, but it feels awesome to have this done, installed, looking good. Everything's looking very clean in here, which I love, and I want to keep it that way. That being said, looking around, I kind of got to clean it up a little bit, because without the engine hatch on, bugs are always getting in here and dying, whatever. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys found this interesting and useful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, share the video, leave a comment, try and respond to as many as I can, and yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Bye.